Alrighty guys, thanks for joining me. This is your host ID Jester. We are working on Dominion and all of the expansions here. We're at expansion number 10. This one is the big boy. Empires. Empires is the name of this expansion. Expansion number 10. So this is kind of a... just like the expansion number 9, which was Adventures, kind of took some of the mechanics of some of the other games and kind of bumped them up a notch. Empires kind of does the same thing, takes some of the other core mechanics and some of the other expansions and also bumps them up quite a bit, adds some new mechanics we're going to cover and talk about here in Empires. So in Empires, first of all, it is got a lot of cards and a lot of information. And where'd the cards go? I moved the cards. Here are the cards. So you can see it's got a lot of cards, and it actually has some new mechanics that we're going to talk about right here, right now. All right, so let me move this out of the way. All right. There we go. All right, so you're going to get these super cool metal tokens. These are going to be used for keeping track of several things. Victory points now, so there's like a 1 victory point marker. There is a 2 victory point marker and a big 5 victory point marker that you can use because now you're going to score victory points when you activate and do certain things. And then also there is these silver tokens here, or copper, whatever you want to call them. These are debt tokens. These are going to be debt tokens, and some of the cards you will be able to get, and they will give you debt tokens. So let's talk about the debt tokens and the rules associated with them. Shall we? I think we shall. All right. All right, so Empire says debt tokens. These are included with any of these symbols. So you can see symbols in some of the cards that have this copper symbol in them. Like this one, and Royal Blacksmith, Overlord. Let's see what else. Engineer, City Quarters, and some of the other cards. Having debt tokens. So if you get any debt tokens, if you have any debt tokens in front of you, whether you have 1 or you have 100 of them, the rules apply. Debt tokens prevent players from buying cards or events, and debt tokens do nothing else. For example, they have no other effect at the end of the game. Buying a card or event with debt in its cost gives that player that many debt tokens. So if you were to buy an Overlord, it doesn't cost you any money, but you get 8 debt tokens. And of course, the rule of debt tokens is you cannot buy further cards until you pay off your debt. Buying a card or event, we just talked about that. A player removes debt tokens during his buy phase by paying 1 normal money. 1 normal money, or this would be a 6 or whatever. You can pay off 6 of your debt. But if you still have 1 at the start of your next turn, then you won't be able to purchase cards at all. And it's buy 1 for every 1 money, you pay off 1 point worth of debt that you have. Debt tokens to be removed. This can be done by playing treasures. It can be done both before and after buying cards. Removing debt does not use up a buy. So you might be able to get a card and then immediately pay it off if you use your treasures. And there's some examples in the playbook, but it's pretty self-explanatory. You can't buy anything if you have debt, but you can pay off your debt pretty much anytime you can. Players cannot take debt tokens for no reason, and players cannot overpay with debt. Debt tokens are not counter-limited, so I mean, if you run out of the debt tokens that are in the game, you can continue using them. Just use pennies or whatever you want to use as a substitute. So debt is kind of the new mechanic. You can get free cards, and super cool, fast cards, but then you're gonna have to pay the piper sometime. So only played the base game. Keen to see how this expansion works. So there is a total of, you can see tons of cards out here, but there's, to be honest, there's only 18 what I call normal kingdom cards. There are 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 specialty cards we're going to talk about here in a little bit. So we're going to go over those. Of course, you're going to get your randomizer cards for all of your different cards that you have. You have a bunch of event cards that you can now add into when you're playing with events. These, again, just like in adventures, they're going to have a cost associated with them and give you kind of a bonus. You can pay the money instead of buying a card. You can use your treasures to activate the cost of the card. Some of them actually cost debt. So when you activate the power, you gain debt, right? So if you activate this Triumph Power, you gain in estates. And if you did, you get 1 victory point per card you gain this turn. So let's say you bought 3 cards and then you activate this. It doesn't cost any of your treasures or money. But you're going to get 5 debt, so to activate this power. So that's how that works. You can see quite a few of them have debts on them, and some have normal cost. Again, you should only play with, if you're playing with 2 people, maybe 0, 1, or 2 events. If you're playing with 3 or 4 people, you can do up to 3 or 4 events randomly. The other new mechanic that's added into this expansion with empires is now you have landmarks. Landmarks are very similar to events, and that they will be out in front for players to activate to get certain things. So, for example, if you have the tomb in play, you notice they don't cost any money or anything to activate. They usually tell you when they can activate. So when you trash a card, get a victory point. So if the tomb is in play, then both players get to activate this. So anytime a player trashes a card, they're going to get a victory point. Again, you're just going to keep these, stack them up, and then at the end of the game, they're going to go towards your total victory point marker. Let's see if we can find kind of another one. All right, here's the fountain. So the fountain, again, this is going to be when scoring 15 victory points if you have at least 10 coppers. So if you have 10 coppers in your deck, you get 15 victory points if this card's in play. What the book says about landmarks is they should, you should play with 0, 1, or 2 events if you're playing with 2 people. If you're playing with 3 or 4 or 5, 6 people, you can kind of adjust how many events you play with. And a landmark can basically substitute for an event. So you can play with 1 event and 1 landmark. You can play with 2 landmarks. You can play with 2 events if you're playing with 2 people. If you're playing with, say, 3 people, you might want to do 2 events and a landmark. So you can kind of mix and match the landmarks with the events. These, again, are not going to have any cost of money or debt. They're just going to have a special ability that you can activate when certain things happen. So the battlefield, when you gain a victory card, take 2 victory tokens from here. So this one's going to start with victory tokens on top of it. It's going to start with 6 per player. So if you're playing on a 2-player game, you're going to put 12 on here. And then anytime a player gains a victory card, they're going to take 2 from here until it runs out. So each card is different, has its own special ability, and they're super cool because they definitely add a lot of new mechanics to the game. We already talked to randomizers. You're going to get your normal blue-sided randomizers. So let's talk about the special stacks down here. Again, there's 6 special stacks. So we have, first one we want to talk about is the castle stack. So the castle stack, there is, let me set this up again. And where's the small capsule? There it is. All right. So there is 2 humble castles, a crumbling castle, 2 small castles, a haunted castle, an opulent castle. There's 2 of those. A sprawling castle, a grand castle, a king's castle. There's 2 of them. If you're playing with just 2 people, you only play with 1 of each of the castles. So you're going to play with a total of 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 cards. And the way this deck is, this pile is set up is by the cost to purchase them. So you put the lowest cost of 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, and 10. And the players can only purchase the card that's on top of this stack. So you can't just go, oh, I've got 10 money, I want to buy the King's Castle. No, the only one you can buy is the one on top. And if several of these have been purchased, and then a player needs to return a card to its pile, and he puts, say, this one back on top, then, again, the players can only purchase this one. So if you're playing with just two people, you're going to use just 1 of each of the castles. If you're playing with 3, 4, 5, 6 people, then you're going to use all of the castle cards. And again, you can only ever buy the castle that is on the very top. And of course, the deck, as you go through the deck and you start buying them, they get bigger and better and more important and super cool things, which we'll look at when we go through the cards. So that's what the castle deck is. If you draw the castle randomizer, this one here, you're going to use that deck. And you're going to adjust the deck based on the number of players you have. It actually talks about it right here on this card and tells you everything I just said. And then you're ready for play. These other 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 stacks are unique in that they are what they're calling split decks. So if we look at the Catapult deck, you notice there is 5 copies of Catapult, and then there's 5 copies of a different card. And in this case, it's called Rocks. So you're going to have split deck being 5 cards of one type, and then 5 cards of a different type, and the way you set this up is the cheaper card, in this case, Catapult, only costs 3, goes on top. And the same rules apply as like the castle. You can only purchase the card on top. And you have to work your way through this to get to the better cards that are underneath that. And that's set up the same way for all 5 of these decks. They're all split decks. So you're going to get the Catapult with the Rocks. You're going to get the Patrician, 5 cards of the Patrician. On top of the Emporium, these cost 2, these cost 5. Again, you can only purchase the card that is on top. You can't. The way they recommend you set it up when you set it up is you do it like this as a reminder that this is a split deck, but you can't purchase. The only card you can purchase is the top card. So highly recommend that you do it this way so you can, oh yeah, that's right, there's an Emperor. If all these got bought, right, and you're now doing Emporiums and people are buying these, but then a card gets returned to the top of the deck, then again, you can only purchase the one that's untapped, even though they've already been purchased. And then as a side note, if you have the tokens that we had seen from the last episode in Empires, where you can place a token on a stack that might give you +1 money, or +1 buy, or +1 action. If you play either of the cards in the stack, then that gets activated. So it doesn't matter if it's one or the other. You get that bonus with both of them. The Gladiator is on top. There's 5 of these. And underneath is Fortune. It's an 8 gold and 8 debt card. So you must spend 8 gold to get this card. And then you also take 8 debt as well. But look, it's a ×2. So you're going to double whatever money you made this turn. So if you made $10 and you play a fortune, you're going to make 20 money. So that's what that does. Then we also have the Encampment and the Plunder underneath. Again, these cost 2, these cost 5, so these are on top. And our last split deck is the Settlers, 5 Settlers, and then the Bustling Village. 2 for Settlers, 5 for the Bustling Village. But we're going to see all that when we go to the computer screen and look at the cards. There is 21 events. 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13 events. Maybe it's only 13. And 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, 21 different landmarks, plus these special cards here. And we're going to look at them all right now so you guys can see and hear what they look like. All right, so first one we're going to look at here is the Archive. So let's take a look at the Archive. It's a 5-cost action duration. It's a duration card because it's orange. The orange cards are duration cards. So it's going to give you +1 action. And then you're going to set aside the top 3 cards of your deck face down. You may look at them, but you're going to set them aside and face down. Now, and at the start of your next 2 turns, put 1 in your hand. So you're going to draw 3 cards. So you're going to, let's just say, your hand, you're going to draw 3 cards. You're going to look at them. And then you're going to set them down face down. But you can look at them and set them up however you want. And then you're going to draw a card and put it in your hand. And the next turn you're going to draw a card and put it in your hand. And then finally on the third card time through the deck. So this duration card is actually going to be out there for 3 of your turns before it's discarded. So that's what the Archive does. Next up, let's look at Charm. Let's look at the Charm, shall we? It's a 5-cost treasure. Of course, treasure because it's yellow. And you notice the top, up at the top, it's got the question mark. When you play this, you get to choose one. You either get +1 buy or +2 money, or the next time you buy a card this turn, you may also gain a differently named card with the same cost. So the next time you buy a card this turn, you may also gain a differently named card, but it has to have the same cost. So if you bought let's look. If you bought a Legionnaire, you can also get a Groundskeeper for free because they have the same cost. So that is what the Charm does. Let's look at the Chariot Race. Chariot Race, where are you? Where are you? Why can't I find you? There you are. All right, the Chariot Race. It's a 3-cost action card. It gives you +1 action, so it pays for itself. Reveal the top card of your deck and put it in your hand. The player to your left reveals the top card of their deck. If your card costs more, you get +1 money and +1 victory points. So again, you're going to use these victory point tokens for this. For the Chariot Race, you're going to use the victory point tokens. So reveal the top card of your deck, put it in your hand. The player to your left reveals the top card of their deck. If your card costs more than their card, it gets a +1 money for you and a victory point. That's what the Chariot Race does. Next up, we're going to look at the city quarters. City quarters. It's an 8 debt action. So again, if you're just joining us, I'm going to go over debts really quickly, but I would highly recommend you watch earlier in the video where we talk about debts. But if you have any debts, you can no longer purchase any cards. So if you get the city quarter and get 8 debt, you can't purchase any more cards. So you probably want to obviously make that towards the end of your turn. You can then pay off your debt by spending 1 money for every 1 debt that you owe. So in this, you would have to pay off 8 money before you can then purchase any more cards. But it does give you +2 actions, and then reveal your hand, +1 card per action card revealed. So it's going to give you 2 actions automatically, and then you're going to reveal the rest of your hand, and it's going to give you +1 card per action card revealed. So if you had 2 other action cards in your hand, you're going to draw 2 more cards. That's what the city quarter does. It's an 8 debt, kind of expensive debt card. That was the city quarter. Let's look at the capital. That's what we're looking for right here. It's a 5-cost treasure, of course, because it's yellow. Gives you 6 money and +1 buy. When you discard this from play, you take 6 debt, and then you must pay off debt. When you discard this from play, take 6 debt, and then you may pay off debt. So if you have to discard this for any reason, it's going to be expensive because you're going to have to discard this from play. You're going to have to take 6 debt. We got to hide a user here, so give me just a second because there's a lot of fucking idiots out there in the world. All right. So that is the capital. Now let's go with the crown. There we go. Let's see what the crown is all about. It's 5-cost action treasure. My regulation, this might be our first action treasure we've come across, at least in the last couple expansions. If it's your action phase, you may play an action from your hand twice. If it's your buy phase, you may play a treasure from your hand twice. So big decisions. You can either play an action card twice, or you can play a treasure card twice. That would be really cool to help you pay off your debts as well, if you have any debts. So the crown. All right, now let's look at another duration card here. I know it's duration card because it's orange, right? It's a 3-cost action attack duration, the Enchantress. Ooh, the Enchantress. Until your next turn, the first time each other player plays an action card on their turn, they get +1 card and +1 action instead of following its instructions. Ooh. Ooh. At the start of your next turn, you get +2 cards. Until your next turn, the first time each other player plays an action card on their turn, they get +1 card and +1 action instead of following the instructions on the card. Of course, this is an attack. They might have some kind of ability to block this card. So it doesn't seem that great, to be honest, because they could play a really crappy action and actually get a card and an action for it. But if your opponent is playing or purchased a lot of really fancy dancy cards, it might be worth grabbing this card. All right, let's look at the Engineer now. Where is the Engineer? Oh, where is he? I wish they would have done this in alphabetical order. That would have made my life a little bit easier, but there's the Engineer. Let's see what the Engineer does. It is a 4-debt action. The Engineer. Gain a card costing up to 4. You may trash this. If you do, gain a card costing up to 4. So you gain a card costing up to 4 when this card comes into play. And then you may trash it. And if you do, gain a card costing up to 4. So you're going to get 2 cards that cost 4. And it's only going to cost you 4 debt, which will cost you only 4 to pay it off. So you're going to get 4 for free out of the deal, I think. That seems like an interesting card. That's the Engineer. All right, let's go on to the forum here. Where's the forum? Oh my gosh. Why am I having so much problems trying to find these cards? Forum. No, that's Fortune, dummy. Forum. There's the forum. The forum. Come on. There we go. All right, so the forum gives you a +3 card. It's a 5-cost action, by the way. It is a +3 cards, a +1 action, and then you're going to discard 2 cards. So you're going to draw 3 cards. It's going to give you another action, and then you're going to discard 2 cards. And when you buy this card, you actually get +1 buy. So when you purchase this card, it's going to give you an extra buy, and then when it comes around, every time it comes through your deck, you're going to get +3 cards plus an action. But then you're going to have to discard 2 of those cards. That is the forum. All right. Let's go to the farmer's market. All right, the farmer's market is a 3-cost action gathering. You get +1 buy. And if there are 4 victory points or more on the farmer's market supply pile, take them and trash this. Otherwise, add 1 victory point token to the pile, and then you get +1 money per 1 victory point on the pile. So the farmer's market is going to grow. First time, it's going to give... Somebody's going to have to put a victory token on the pile. And then you're going to get +1 money and +1. So the question I just have off the top of my head is, are you taking that victory point token from the supply, or are you taking it from yourself? Let's look and see if there's some farmer's market. Okay, the first time this is played, it produces a +1 money and +1 buy. The next time +2, then +3, then +4. Then the next time the player takes the 4 victory points and gets no money. Then the next time it's back to +1. This still functions if the farmer's market pile is empty. So it doesn't specifically say if there are 4 or more, then take them and trash this card. Otherwise, add 1. Yeah, I'm assuming you take it from this, not from your own pile, but from like the supply pile and put it on there. And then, yeah, so you want to cycle some of these through your deck as fast as you can. If your opponent isn't using the farmer's market, you can get a whole bunch of extra victory points. I see. Yeah, that's cool. I like that. I like it a lot. All right, let's go with the Legionnaire. Let's see what the Legionnaire is all about. It's a 5-cost attack action. The Legionnaire gives you 3 money right off the bat. Boom, nice chunk of change. And you may reveal gold from your hand. If you do, each other player discards down to 2 cards in hand, then draws a card. So, Legionnaire works really well with gold, obviously. So it gives you 3 money, and then you reveal gold from your hand. If you do, each other player discards down to 2 cards in hand, then draws a card. That's cool. All right, let's go to the Groundskeeper. If we can find the Groundskeeper, there she is. The Groundskeeper, 5-cost action, gives you +1 card, +1 action. And while this is in play, when you gain a victory card, you get +1 victory token. So every time you gain a victory card while this is in play, +1 victory point. Or victory token. Yeah, you know what I'm saying. Right. Overlord. Oh, here comes the one we were looking at. This is an attack command. I'm sorry, an action command. It's an 8 debt. So you're going to go into debt. Won't be able to purchase anything until you can pay off your debt. Play a non-command action card from the supply costing up to 5, but you leave it there. So every time he comes up, you get to choose an action card from the supply that costs up to 5. You don't purchase it or anything, you just get to activate it. So that's interesting. Very interesting, because you get quite a variety of having this guy. So sometimes you might want to activate, say, the Groundskeeper. Sometime you might want to activate the Legionnaire. Sometime you might want to activate the Forum. Sometimes you might want to activate the Farmer's Market. So it gives you a lot of flexibility. You do have to pay off 8. That's going to be pretty brutal unless you get some nice treasures in your hand. Let's go to the Royal Blacksmith. Let's see what he gives you. Holy cow, another action card. 8 debt. Another big boy debt card. Because you fuzz 5 cards. Reveal your hand. Discard the coppers. So you're going to get 5 extra cards. Reveal your hand and discard the coppers. So you won't get to use any coppers because you got to pay for the Royal Blacksmith. But he's hopefully going to give you something really good in return with 5 extra cards. That's pretty good. Pretty good. Wow, you can see there's so many good choices in Dominion and so many different options, and it's crazy. Sacrifice. It's a 4-cost action. Trash a card from your hand. If it's an action card, you get +2 cards, +2 actions. If it's a treasure card, you get +2 money. And if it's a victory card, you get +2 victory tokens. So sacrificing something, trashing a card. We looked at a card earlier. Which one was it? That if you trash a card, something happens. Where was that card? I forget which one it was. Well, maybe we'll come across it again. All right, so now let's talk about the temple. The temple, well, it's got to be good because it's a temple. It's a 4-cost action gathering, so this gathering is about getting victory point tokens. So, you can see first off, you're going to gain a victory token. Then you're going to trash from 1 to 3 differently named cards from your hand. Excuse Excuse me. Oh my gosh. And you're going to add 1 victory token to the temple supply pile. When you gain this, take the victory points from the temple supply pile. So you're going to gain a victory point token, and then you're going to trash 1 to 3 differently named cards from your hand. So a really good trasher is the temple. Really good. And then you're going to add a victory point token to the supply pile. And then the next time somebody buys the temple, you're going to get all the victory points at the temple supply. That's interesting. Okay, cool. It can really, if 2 players are fighting over temples, it can really work back and forth, which is kind of cool. Or if 1 player is doing temple and the other player is not, you might be able to get yourself a whole bunch of victory points. So if you start playing temple, you're kind of almost force your opponent to play temple, or he's going to miss out on some victory points. All right, let's look at the villa, which is right next door. It's a force cost action. It is +2 actions. So it's going to pay for itself and give you an extra action. It's going to give you an extra buy, and it's going to give you an extra buck to spend. When you gain this, put it into your hand. You get +1 action, and if it's your buy phase, return it to your... and if it's your buy phase, return to your action phase. So you buy the villa. When you buy the villa, you put it directly into your hand. You get an action, and since you're in your buy phase, you return back to your action phase, which means you can then purchase, or you can then play any other actions that you might not have been able to play in your hand. Oh, that's kind of cool. Plus, it gives you an extra buy and a little bit extra money, too. Wow. That's the villa. Then we have the Wild Hunt. It's a 5-cost action gathering. Again, you're going to be getting victory tokens. Choose one, 3 cards, and add 1 victory point token to the Wild Hunt supply pile. Or gain an estate, and if you do, take the victory points from that pile. So you're either going to get 3 cards and add 1 to the Wild Hunt pile. And we have to remove somebody else here. Plus 3 cards, and then you're going to get to add a victory token to the Wild Hunt supply pile. So you just put it on top of this this stack, and then when somebody buys an estate, they can get all the victory points from the Wild Hunt. So buying an estate might earn you 3, 4, 5, 6, 10 extra victory points. Cool. So I believe that is all 18. Is that what I counted? 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, 12, 14, 16. Yeah, because some of these cards we're going to look at. Oh, yeah, I guess we should look at those. Right. So let's do the double. Look at these split decks before we look at the castles, because it'll be a little bit easier. So we're going to look at the split decks. Well, first one we're going to look at is Catapult. Do we have those? Yes, we do. All right, so Catapult is part of the split deck. It's going to be the top part of the split deck between Catapult and Rocks. So we'll look at Rocks right after this one. So Catapult says it's a 3-cost action attack. It gives you +1 money, and then you get to trash a card from your hand. If it costs 3 or more, each other player gains a curse. If it's a treasure, each other player discards down to 3 cards in hand. So if you were to silver, right? If you were to trash a silver, each other player would gain a curse, and they would also have to discard down to 3 cards in hand as well. So that's the catapult. That's the first 5 cards, and then the bottom 5 cards are going to be the rocks. So let's look at the rocks. The bottom 5 cards will be rocks. 4-cost treasure. So you cannot buy these until all the other ones are gone. 4-cost treasure gives you 1 money, and then when you gain or trash this, gain a silver. If it's your buy phase, put the silver on your deck. Otherwise, put it in your hand. So when you gain or trash this, gain a silver. If it's your buy phase, put the silver on your deck. Otherwise, put it into your hand. Because some other cards might allow you to get this card. Like the Legionnaire might be able to get this. No, you can't, because it's not an action. It's a treasure. So, all right. So when you gain or trash this, gain a silver. If it's your buy phase, put the silver on your deck. Otherwise, put it in your hand. Cool. So that's what the catapult and rocks do. The next combo is going to be the Patrician here. He's going to be the top card. 2-cost action. He's going to give you a card and an action and reveal the top card of your deck. If it costs 5 or more, put it in your hand. Simple. Pretty simple. And then he's going to be on top of the Emporium. So 5-card Patrician, and then underneath the Patrician is going to be the Emporium. And they're going to be 5 cards, and it's a 5-cost action. +1 card, +1 action, +1 money. When you gain this, if you have at least 5 action cards in play, you get +2 victory points. So lots of action cards. You're building a nice little engine. You're going to get some victory points when you have a whole bunch of action cards. Cool. Third one we're going to look at is the Gladiator. He, of course, is the top 5 cards of the stack, the split stack. Gives you 2 money right off the bat. Reveal a card from your hand. The player to your left may reveal a copy of that card. If they don't, you get +1 money and trash a Gladiator from the supply. Notice it does say the player to your left may reveal a copy of the card. So they can choose not to if they don't want to. And if they don't, you're going to get an extra $1, and you get to trash a Gladiator from the supply. If it's the top card of the supply pile. And then the Gladiator is going to be on top of Fortune. So let's see what Fortune's all about. It is 8-cost, 8 debt treasure. So it does cost 8 to purchase it, and then you're going to go 8 in debt. But it gives you +1 buy. And then when you play this, double your money you have earned this turn. So if you earn 10, double it to 20. If you earn 20, you double it to 40. That +1 buy is going to be obviously very important. When you gain this, gain a gold per Gladiator you have in play. So if you can get a bunch of Gladiators and a Fortune, oh my gosh. You get 3 Gladiators and this card. And when you gain this card, you would get 3 gold. If you had 3 Gladiators out. Wow. And then, of course, those gold are going to help spur on your ×2 multiplier as well. So that seems really good. All right. Encampment is the top card of another split deck. Top 5 cards. It's a 2-cost action. Gives you +2 cards. +2 actions. Really? Wow. That is really good. For two stinking ducats, you're going to get 2 cards and 2 actions. You may reveal a gold or plunder from your hand. If you do not, set this aside and return it to the supply at the start of cleanup. So you have to have either gold or a plunder from your hand. If you don't, you got to set it aside and then return it to the supply at the start of your cleanup phase. So you're going to lose it if you don't have a gold or a plunder. And guess what card is underneath the encampment? You might have guessed. It's the Plunder Card. It's a 5-cost treasure. Gives you $2 right off the bat and a victory point token. So every time it comes up, plus this plunder will keep your encampment around as well. And the last split card we're going to look at is the Settlers. There's the Settlers. It's a 2-cost action. It's going to be the top 5 cards of the split deck. It's going to give you +1 card and +1 action for $2 again. Not bad. Look through your discard pile. You may reveal a copper from it and put it in your hand. Okay, so you can basically get a copper in your hand, an extra $1. A card, an action, and a $1 for 2. It only costs you 2. That's pretty good. Settlers is on top of the Bustling Village. Bustling Village will be the bottom 5 cards of this stack. It's a 5-cost action. Gives you +1 card, +3 actions. Wow, a lot of actions. Look through your discard pile. You may reveal a Settler from it and put it in your hand. And of course, by taking that Settler and putting it in your hand, you can then play +1 card, +1 action, and then look through your discard pile and reveal a copper. So this has kind of got a little whammy jammy going on. That's kind of interesting. All right, so that was a look at all the split cards. Again, it's kind of good that they put all of these together here back to back. We have the Catapult with the rocks. We have the Patrician with the Emporium. We have the Gladiator and the Fortune cards. The Encampment, which is up here, and the Plunder, and then the Settlers and the Bustling Village. So these are all combo cards. Oh, look, they have like a little thing on the side that shows that there's like a split deck thing. Oh, no. I guess who's around every card? Ignore me. Ignore me. Okay. All right, so let's look at the castle now. So the castles, again, if you're playing with just 2 people, you're going to play with 1 copy of each castle. If you're playing with 3 or more people, then the Humble Castle, the Small Castle, the Opulent Castle, and the King's Castle all have 2 copies. So you'll be playing with like 14 cards as opposed to 8. The Humble Castle is, and I'm not going to go to the next page because I guess you guys can see that it's a 3-cost treasure victory castle. Gives you $1. Again, you can only buy the castle that's on the very top, so you know you're kind of stuck with what's there, or you have to wait until somebody else buys it and then get the one that's underneath it. If you're waiting on, say, the small castle, you can either buy the ones that are on top of it and then hope your opponent doesn't buy the small castle. But the Humble Castle gives you 1 money, and then it's worth 1 victory point per castle you have at the end of the game. So if you had all, what is there, 8, right? 2, 4, 6, 8. If you had all 8, if you bought all 8 castles, it'd be worth 8 victory points, the Humble Castle. And again, there would be 2 copies of this on the top of the deck. If you're playing with, say, 3 or 4 people, if nobody else bought the castle, you can actually get both of the castles. So you could get up to, again, if you're playing with 3 or 4 or 5, 6 people, there might be 14 castles you could end up buying if you just did the whole castle thing. All right, once the Humble Castles are gone, then you can go to the Crumbling Castle. It's a 4-cost victory castle. It's worth a victory point, so every time it comes up, you just get a victory token. And then when you gain or trash this, you get a victory token, and you get to gain a silver. So you gain So when you gain this, or trash it, you're going to get +1 victory point, and you're going to gain a silver. Next up is the small castle. It's a 5-cost action victory castle. Trash this or a castle from your hand. If you do, gain a castle. So a small castle, you can trash it for a better castle, or whatever next castle is on the stack. And it's worth 2 victory points when you buy it. The Haunted Castle's up next. It's a 6-cost victory castle. It gives you 2 victory points when it comes up. When you gain this during your turn, you gain a gold, and each other player with 5 or more cards in hand puts 2 cards from their hand onto their deck. So when you gain this during your turn, you gain a gold, and each other player with 5 or more cards in hand puts 2 cards from their hand onto their deck. And notice it is not an attack, which is interesting. You would think that would actually be an attack, but it's not listed as an attack. Then you have the Opulent Castle, which is a 7-cost action victory castle. Discard any number of victory cards, and you get +2 money per card discarded. So you can discard all your victory point cards and get +2 money per card discarded. And then it's worth 3 victory tokens every time it comes up. Then up is the Sprawling Castle. It's a 8-cost victory castle. 4 victory tokens. And when you gain this, gain a duchy or 3 estates. So you can see, you might, normally you'd want to thin your deck with just get the 1 duchy, but if you got the 3 estates, your estates would work with the Opulent Castle, because every victory card you discarded will give you +2 money per card discarded, depending on what you're doing with as you're playing. That would be interesting. That's the Sprawling Castle. Next thing is the Grand Castle, the 9-cost victory castle. Gives you 5 victory points. And when you gain this, reveal your hand, and you get +1 victory points per victory card in your hand or in play. So anything with the old victory word, you're going to get an extra victory point for every other card or in your hand or in play. So it's going to be worth 5. Reveal your hand +1. I bet you, if we look at the castle, let me look at this, because I'm wondering, does this count for itself? I bet you it does, but all it says is Grand Castle counts both victory cards in play and victory cards in your hand. So I guess it wouldn't count itself. And then, of course, you have the King's Castle. It's a 10 victory castle. And it's worth 2 victory points per castle you have. So a lot of victory point tokens in the castle matrix, I guess. So, of course, it also adds some events. Some of these events will give you debt, or some of them will cost money to activate, and they just do whatever the power is. So, Salt of the Earth, if this is in play again, if you're playing with 2 people, they either recommend you play with 0, 1, or 2 events or landmarks. If you're playing with 3 people or 4 people, you might go up to like 3 or 4 events. If you're playing with 5 or 6, you might go up to, say, 3, 4, 5 events, depending on, how many you really want to add. You don't want to add, like, let's just put out 10 events, because that would get a little crazy. So, you know, in this case, you would spend 4 money and you're going to get a victory point and then trash a victory card from the supply. So you could actually, you could trash a castle because they are victory. So you could trash, like, oh, I don't want the Haunted Castle. You could trash it and get to the Opulent Castle, and then you could buy it. If you had enough money, that is. This one will give you, cost you 4 to purchase it, and you're going to get 3 debt to do a wedding. It gives you 1 victory point, and you're going to gain a gold. So you're going to gain a gold for only 3. Well, it's going to cost you 4, and then you're going to go in debt by 3, but you're going to get a victory point and gain a gold. Not sure that's a great option. Gold only costs 6, but you're not getting a victory point either. So having those victory point tokens could be important depending on how many options are out. Look at this one. 14 cost card to activate Dominate. You gain a province, and if you do, 9 victory points. So you get a province, which is worth 8, and then you're going to get 9 on top of that, so you're going to get 17 victory points. It does cost 14, so each one of these, again, does something different. And then, of course, we have 21 landmarks. These, again, don't cost any money, don't give you any debt or anything, but you can only activate the power when the timing mechanism on the card says you can. So the museum, when you're scoring, you get 2 victory points per different named card you have. So lots of different cards gives you lots of victory points if you're playing with this card. If you're playing with the wall when you're scoring, you get -1 victory point per card you have after the first 15. So if you have a really big deck, you're going to get a lot of minus victory points. So lots of different strategies based upon either landmarks or events that you have in play. And of course, the events, you can use these events with the other events from the other expansions as well. So the cool mechanic, the debt mechanic, and the split deck, and of course the growing castle, and then of course all of the new events and the landmarks definitely makes this a very enjoyable game. It doesn't add too many really complex, doesn't really add too many complex rules to the game. There is some timing mechanisms you need to work through and figure out when you can do this or you can't do that at certain times. Once you get that a pretty good hand of this, so like I said, you might not want to have this as like your first expansion that you get past the core game. But it's definitely one that you might want to look at and pick up because it does add quite a variety of stuff to the game with the new mechanics and the different combinations of going in debt, getting super powerful cards, but having to pay these off before you can get any other cards, victory points that you're going to be able to get outside of the actual victory cards, and the split decks and working through that mechanism and trying to figure out if you're buying a bunch of gladiators and your opponent isn't buying any gladiators, and then you can start getting these fortunes out. In the meantime, they're doing other things that seem really good as well, so it could be a big race to see who gets their mechanic. If you're buying a lot of gladiators so you can get some fortunes in your hand, but your opponent's buying a bunch of castles, it could be quite an interesting battle going and trying to figure out, who's going to go in debt, how far are you going to go in debt before you can, Royal Blacksmith, 5 cards. That's pretty good. But you're going to go in debt pretty high, or the Overlord, or the city quarters. So that is a look at Empires. Kind of a I would say, a Roman theme to a lot of the things with the arena, the aqueducts, the labyrinth, the wall, the keep. Of course, the Gladiator we looked at. So it's definitely got like a Roman theme to it. So if you like the theme mechanics, you got the Legionnaire as well. You got the Wild Hunt, the Temple and the Villa and the Capital, the Enchantress. Yeah, it's definitely got that theme. So if you like the theme of, Romans and the old legions and stuff like that, then you might want to pick this up as well. A sacrifice. Definitely cool mechanics. A lot to work through. A lot of different combos. It's not just play your cards and just move on. There's a lot more to think about. A lot more interactions going on, which is great. And it keeps the game fresh and interesting when it does that. So thanks for coming out. Thanks for watching. Hopefully you enjoyed our look at expansion number 10 for Dominion Empire. Till next time, take care, everybody. We'll talk to you soon.